Ready to roll? We'll try Bezos Hashem today. In addition to finishing the Siman Reshid Aleph, I'll try Bezos Hashem to try to get to very halacha l'maisa in this very, very important sugya. It's a sugya you see that the Gemara in Brachos, the Daf Lamed, which is really the first sif that we'll talk about today, which is sif Gimel and Reshid Aleph, that there were Talmidim that lost their lives because of the Din Kedim and Brachos. Perhaps it was a different cheshbon also, but you see where their schus kiyum was. The first, I'm going to go one by one through the sifim. We're up to sif Gimel. I'm going to go one by one. I think that sif Gimel we did last time. I just want to make sure that we clarify some of the nekudas. The nekudas that come out, and then I want to get very practical, Bezos Hashem. The nekudas that come out of sif Gimel are the actual Seder Advarim, that you're going to have the siman for the rest of your life. Maga Eish, Mem is, or Ha-Maga Eish, Ha-Moitzi, Mem is Mezainis, Gimel is Gafen, obviously. And if all factors are equal, we'll see soon, Eitz, beats Adama, beats Sha'akol. This comes out of the Gemara in Brachos Daf Lamed Tes. That the Gemara in Brachos Daf Lamed Tes.
Okay.
Everyone hears me?
Yeah. It's weird. Yeah, we got lower, but I think it's from outside. Yeah, you lowered a little bit. Okay.
Now we're good? That the Gemara in Brachos Daf Lamed Tes.
Is the Zoom hearable? Everybody in the Zoom? It's okay? Yes?
Okay.
The Gemara in Brachos Daf Lamed Tes. The Gemara says that that's clear in the Gemara that Sha'akol loses to even Adama. In other words, everything beats a Sha'akol. Sha'akol is obviously a very kloliistic bracha. Hadama has a little bit more hashkacha pratis. It shows the more the Helik Bashefer's simsum specific pre of the Adama. Bari Priate is a little bit more. Mezainis seems to be much more. And I might see obviously is the Me'ula Shebabrachas. Geffen is even also on top of a Bari Priate. But the way you remember it is Maga H. You're playing with fire when you're dealing with the Kedim Brachas. Mezainis, Geffen, Eitz, Adama, Sha'akol. And that's something that before we even begin, you got to remember that. That's the Aleph base. That's number one. Number two, and that's the Shulchan Aruch brings down. And see Gimel over here, Mishabur brings it down all the time. That means it doesn't matter if there's a chaviv, it doesn't matter anything. It's always very clear. The Mezainis, Geffen, Eitz, Adama, Sha'akol. Now, Eitz, Adama, obviously, we're going to come back to in a moment. That's number one. Number two is Legabe, the Seder Advarim. I'll say it now already. Legabe the Seder Advarim, even though this is more in Sif Dalid, Kol HaMuktim B'Pasik, but I'll say it now. Anytime you have a Bari Priya Eitz, there's a Seder there also. Anything that's closer in the Pasik to the word Eretz. We'll see in a minute why it's like that, what? But anything, the Eretz, Chitas, Oira, the Pasik goes on, and the Pasik says that whatever is Eretz, Chitas, Oira, Geffen, Teina, Rimon, Eretz, Eishem, and Dvash. And the Gemara says whatever is closer to the word Eretz is more Muktam. And the emes is that the Turi Evan asked the Kash and Chagiga Daf Yud Beis and Beis, and the Tzlach and Brachos Daf Mem Aleph, Amid Aleph. They asked Kagufa, why did the Torah split the pasuk into two Eretzes? Why didn't the Torah just say that Eretz, Chita, Sarah, Geffen, Teina, Remain, Zay, Shem, and Dvash? Why did the Torah bring in this word Eretz? That's the obvious diak over here. And more so, one could have asked the question, does the Torah necessarily mean a Kedima? Where do you see the Torah means a Kedima? Maybe the Torah is just bringing out Shvach of Eretz Yisrael, but like the Mefarshim explained, the Tzlach and the Shagas Aryeh, the Chladaz Metaretz Chaverta. If the Torah went out of its way to split up and bring another Eretz, it's trying to show you that there is here some type of a Seder that needs to be followed, which means whoever is closer to the word Eretz is going to be first. Now, how are you going to remember this for the rest of your life? You're always going to sing the song in your head. How are you going to remember this? So it's very simple. Pits. That's how you remember this for the rest of your life. Pits. Olive has one pit. A date has that double pit. What's next, Rabbi say? No. Next
Pomegranate has many pits.
Pomegranate is last. No. Pomegranate is going to be cooler pits. But next is going to be grapes. Grapes have a few pits. Figs is tons of pits. And Rimoin is the pits. All pits. So that's how you remember this for the rest of your life. Pit, olive, double pit is a tamer. A lot of pits are grapes. They have lots of pits. Figs is mamish, all around seeds, all around pit. But Rimoin is the pits. It's cool by the pits. But that's a lane. You remember that for the rest of your life. So if you have a choice of making a bracha on a grape or on a pomegranate, right away you're going to know the answer. Avada, grape comes first. You have bracha on olive or on a date, you know right away, olive comes first. That's how you remember this. Now, we say that's the simple halacha. Those are the easy halachas. But over here, and that's the Mishabura and Tzivkot to Zion. It seems to be this was like a problem in his time that people would have after davening, a bissel kichel, some bramfin. And, he would have what bracha would he make first? He would think to make first the bracha on the bramfin, on the schnapps. And the Mishabura warns you, he says, no, if you have schnapps and a merkachas, and you've gotten to Zion, I don't know what the merkachas is. It sounds like some type of more of a, maybe eitz or dama, but no question, the eitz of the adama called before shahakal. And even if the schnapps is chaviv, even though the schnapps is chaviv labi eitzer, says the Mishabura. That's the simple. The problem, and last time I breezed through this, I'll just say it again because I want to make sure it's clear. The big need in the Rishonim is that it's clear, Mizainis beats Geffen, and it's clear, Geffen beats Eitz, and it's clear, Adama beats Shahakal, and it's clear everybody else beats Shahakal. The only question is, Eitz and Adama is perhaps not such a major chilik, and therefore maybe we can allow other factors to be kaveya. In other words, Eitz and Adama, the difference of the ashkocha that the Heilige Bashefer shows by saying Boire Priya Eitz, he makes the Pri of the Eitz, and Boire Priya Adama, they're both Pri. Elamai won a little bit more because the Priya Eitz, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave you a finished product, gave you an apple. It was this bashal in the sun. Mashen get a potato, you still have to work. So you see, there's more hashkocha. The Heilige Bashefer gives you more of a finished product. So therefore, there is a mile in Eitz, and this is why the Bahag and the Ra'al and the Emes, it is already, if I'm not mistaken, brought in Taisis and Brachos. They bring down that therefore Eitz comes before Adama. Eitz comes before Adama always, and we don't factor in other cheshbonis. But the Rabbeinu Yonim, Brachos, and Davchav Testament Aleph, and the Chinuch, who's not the Ra'al, the Chinuch and Tov Lamed, the B'maschei Viu, they both bring down that no. Since the difference is not so major, the difference isn't so major between Eitz and Adama. It's not like Mizoynis, which is totally different, or Gafen, which is it's not like Adama to Shahakal. So therefore, they both, the Rabbeinu Yoina and the Ra'ah, the Rabbeinu Yoina and the Chinuch, they say that you make on the Chaviv, because the Maila of Eitz of Adama is not big enough to warrant that it gets the bracha, and you could go with the Chaviv. So Nafkamina, for example, a person has a banana, and he loves bananas, right? Or he has French fries, and he loves the French fries. A choice of that or an apple. An apple, he's happy with an apple. He doesn't love the apple. He loves the banana, or he loves the French fries. So in that case, that'll be a machlekes between the Bahag and the Chinuch. The Bahag says, Eitz, no matter what, I don't care that you like the banana. And the Rabbeinu Yoina, the Chinuch, they both say you go with the Chaviv. Chaviv wins because that Maila of Eitz over Adama is not so major. How do we paskin? The Kaf HaChaim for the Sfardim, he says the Minig Oilam by the Sfardim is always by Pri Eitz, beats by Pri Adama. This is one case, it's quite easy to be a Sfardi. You don't have to remember anything, just Magaish. That's it. Mashenken and Ashkenazi, that's the sheet of the Bach, the Taz, the Mogen Avram in two places, Dalit and Yud Gimel, Der Chaim, that's the Nestivis. And of course, our Rebbe, the Mishnah Brura, the Baal Tanya, the Chayodam, all of our great placekim, they all go Aloch L'Maisim, Mishnah Brura, Sivkot in Yud Ches, Sivkot in Lamed Hey, Sharetzi and Sivkot in Yud, all go Aloch L'Maisa, that yes, you have to know which one is Chaviv, because the Chaviv, when it comes to Adama and Eitz, is going to be the Kaveya. So therefore, in my case of the potatoes that you like better than the apple, so then you'll make the bracha first on the Adama and then on the Eitz. The Rosh Grad has a sheet, he says you can do what you want. But we don't paskin like that. And Ad Kedei Kach, the Nesivis in the Derech Hayim Siddur, in Dinei Berachos Hanenin, in Siman Reish Yud Ches, Eis Chav Zayin, he also has in the Derech Hayim itself. He says, well, look, this whole thing is not so clear. First of all, maybe Bar Pri beats Adama. And second of all, Chaviv is not so clear which Chaviv we're talking about. So it's true, we always go with the Chaviv in general. Here comes along the Sivis, And he says, if you have a chaviv, I'll read you his lashon. Bari prates. Bari prates. Yaktim amin arogel lias chaviv etzlai. Afilu hasheni hu chaviv loyata. Im shneim regilim lias chaviv b'shaveh. Yaktim mashe chaviv loyata. He says you should go with the chaviv of now. Let's say you have a chaviv in general and a chaviv of now. In general, they're equal, these two chavivs. I like apples as much as I like potatoes. But there's something I'm in a mood for right now. Right now, I'm in a mood for, let's say, an apple. Or let's say I'm in a mood for the potato. So he says, go with the chaviv of now, in this case. But I'll read you the Biur and Sif Aleph. The Evsher oy loy mardafilu bistam priya eitz priya dama gamkein in priya eitz chaviv alav ata yivarich alav avshet tamid chaviv. Here says the Mishabura Gavaldik Chiddush. He says, since anyways the whole idea of bar priya eitz losing to a bar priya dama is a chiddush, and chaviv is also not so pashit. Which one is called a chaviv? So here the Mishabura says a chiddush that if it's chaviv now and it's a bar priya eitz, it'll win. For example, if I have an apple and I'm in a mood for the apple now, so that would beat the French fries. Again, I like French fries more. Usually we don't say that. But over here, the Biur says, there's already a makom to be made. I would say in HILCHOS BRACHOS is one of the few things, not one of the few things, it's one of the things that people, but I don't know. Some people know that Adama wins to an eitz if the Adama is chaviv. I think most people then just say, okay, so then in Adama eitz, chaviv wins. It's not exactly like that. One that learns the sugya b'in properly, he sees that, chaviv b'derek klal, that's true. But if you have a chaviv that is to you now chaviv, and it's a bari priya eitz, that's going to tip the scale. That's what the Biur says. Then it's sarif das bahag over here. And that's not like derech chaim of adil chayra. Should do like the Biur forever remembers this, but this is a very negative case. Person has peanuts and he has all the other nuts on a Friday night. He has peanuts and he has all the other nuts, cashews and who knows what and everything, right? But in general, he likes peanuts more. But right now, he's in a mood more for the cashew. He's in a mood more for the pistachio. So then agam, it's not a chaviv because, or the popcorn. Popcorn is probably more negative. If you ask this guy, you have to chazah these halachas. You have to remember these halachas. You have a guy, he has nuts in front of him, he has popcorn in front of him, he's sitting at a shalom zacher. He's got all the different nuts and he's got popcorn. You ask this guy, tachlis, which one do you like more? He says popcorn. Say, okay, but which one do you want now at the shalom zacher? He says, I'm in a mood now for an almond. So then the halacha, according to the Biur, you make the bracha on the almond first.
Almond.
That's how we said it in the Haim, Rabbi Gottesman. But that's a I would say that's a good test to give people. I would imagine that if you learn the sugya, you got it right. But I imagine most people are going to get that wrong. In other words, number one, most people think, eitz just always beats Adama. Okay, if it's Sephardi, good, but if it's Ashkenazi, no. Number two, will say, okay, but once I know the halacha, chaviv beats Adama, an eitz, but he's not going to know that, but what if, even though it's normally chaviv, but if right now this is chaviv to you, so then we're going to mitzaref the bahag shita, if it's an eitz, and we're going to say the eitz beats the Adama. That'll be my test. Let me know what happens. I don't think most people know that. This is the halacha l'maisa. Sif Dalet. That's the kol hamuktim b'pasik. And that we gave the siman of the pits. And hopefully that's quite clear now. But there is a very, very interesting, this is something you have to remember, Rabbi Isai. This means that wine beats eitz and Adama, but wine certainly loses to mezainis. This, of course, is why we cover the challah. And this is the reason why the Kitzer, the Chayodam, they bring down that you have to cover mezainis when you make Kiddush and Shabbos. Let's say a person's making a Kiddush, you have to cover it. It would seem that you would only have to cover if you're having wine. Let's say you're not having wine and you're just listening to Kiddush and you're just having a piece of cake, so then you don't need to cover. Because your food that you're eating is not getting insulted.
It's a din. The guy's making Kiddush. has to have it covered for him. So they did in the chefza, no? It has to be
The guy who's
covered.
making kiddush only has to cover the cake that he's eating.
Oh, really? Aha.
Why should you have to cover my cake? Well, you think that my cake cares about him? Who cares about him? My cake says.
It's not mavuyish, but so lachla mice, you have a cake platter. So what do
You
you
have a
do?
cake platter. Okay, so maybe I don't know which one he's going to take, but let's say I'm sitting in the fourth row. The person's making kiddush all the way over there. I'm sitting in the fourth row back, and now the kiddush is look, all right, and I'm not having wine. I'm not getting any wine. I don't even have to cover my cake.
So you can eat from cake without it's not covered without any pagam in your halacha, basically.
Correct. Correct.
But lichatchila, lemaisa, since we don't know exactly which one the mavarach is going to take, lemaisa, lechaira.
I would say differently. I would say because maybe the mavarach will take all of them. What?
But we don't. What's the difference? We know he's not going to take all of them, but we don't know which one he's going to take. So you got to cover.
So since you don't know, maybe that piece of cake will turn out lemafreya that he was insulted by your.
The island is not makbid to cover cake at kedushin. That's it's not a problem.
Yeah, the island's not makbid on this. And it's just the from never are makbid on this. I saw that there are maybe the limudei chosim, such as the Muritz Chusim are not so posh.
The Rav gave us his chus. It gave us his chus. The suffix and the Rabbanon, because we don't know which one he's going to take. So each one you can say he's taking the other one.
Some people, they go to a kiddush, they get nervous. Verstehst? And they take right away and they make sure, they get some cover, they get nervous. Me, I go to a base measure to get nervous. I make sure I have a rashba, I'm afraid someone else is going to cop the rashba. Some people are nervous about the cake. Yeah.
Okay.
That's is l'chayra. Now, over here, we're going to start a very interesting topic, which is going to get us into this fabulous Galgal HaChayzer. Kumt over here, Shaila. Shaila's like this. Now I say everything, you go bust the pasuk. So l'chayra, and we know whatever's closer to the word aretz, that's what I'm going to make the bracha on. So let's say I have barley, before the Shar Tshuva, just one moment. Let's say I have barley, and I have olives. What do you make first? The bracha on the barley or the bracha on the olives? L'chayra, it sounds pashit. L'chayra mezainis goes first. L'chayra it's pashit. Mezainis beats magaish, right? Kum taz and the Mogen Avram is a rare thing where there's a very interesting machlekes, and here the Taz and the Mogen Avram, they're together, right? Like we find Rav Shmuel Damar Travayu. Over here, Taz and Mogen Avram Damar Travayu, they both say something, and the Pri Megadim agrees to this, and the Balatanya agrees to this, and the Chai Adam agrees to this. I'm about to say an earth-shattering chiddush. They say pashit, olive beats barley, because in the pasuk it says eretz chita se'oira. So se'oira is two removed from the word eretz. Mashenkein eretz zeis shemenu dvash. Zayis is one removed from the word eretz. So therefore, we know you go basar, whichever one is closer. So they all say Taz, Sivkon Dalad, Mogen Avram, Sivkon Ches, Sivkon Yugimel, the Graz, the Chayodam and Nun Zayin, the Prim Godim and Nechel Avram Ches, and Yugimel, all over the place. He says, always, all these achrayim, mamish, these are the greatest achrayim. Rabbi said, the Graz, the Chayodam, the Mogen Avram, the Taz. They all say if you have a choice of all olives or barley goes first. Let's say you have a cholent. All there is in the cholent is barley and rice. And then after is one olive. You have a good olive over there, right? They say the Maisa with Baruch Mordechai is eingesund. That Baruch Mordechai once came in and told the Bachrim, if everybody in the yeshiva is here on time tomorrow, on time for davening, I'll wear an olive frock. I'll wear a frock, shekemo zayit, and nirekemo zayit. Okay? Kids says, yes, that next day, every Bachrim in the yeshiva, they're coming on time to davening. Every Bachrim was there, Baruch Mordechai walks in, it's a big simcha, he's wearing a black frock. He said, Shiva, to gesucht a frock, cooked azoivi and zayis and olive. He said, Joe, to do green olives and to do the black olives. I dress like the Schwarz olive. But if you have an olive and a cholent, so then the halacha is that you would make the bracha on the olive first, according to the HILCHOS. Over here, kum the lavush, and this is a very important lavush. And the Mishabura, in case you forget this Mishabura, he brings it 6 times if we might count. Sivkotin Chafei, Sivkotin Lamed Hei, Sharatzian Tazayin, Sivkotin Kofches, and Sivkotin Lamed Gimel. The Mishabura loves this.
Can we see one of them inside? Can we see one inside?
Sivkotin Chafei.
Put on Chafei, please. Chafei on 296.
Here the Mishabura says, Boire Mine Mezainis always beats an olive. It beats his eyes. And the Lavush, the shoyl in the Lavush in Siv Dalit wanted to say not like that.
Bottom of 297. Bottom of 297.
He wanted to say that
Sorry.
the Aleph would come first based on the lumdis that we just said, because closer to the Eretz. And he says, you're making a mistake. Mezainis means that's the main thing that gives sustenance and koyach. And that's the ikar tachlis of food. Not that the HILCHOS ever, not lahachir spam nefesh kol chai just to make a shmak, like Taisa says. The ikar tachlis of food is to be mazin and to give sustaining life. Vaday b'rmin mezainis hibracha cheshuva. That for sure says the Halak Levush. Is memela. Mezainis, he says, always comes first because that shows the greatest hashkachas Hashem Yisbarach haprotis habriyosef bazanim salva. I take care of my people, says the Halakha Bashefer. I take care of people. I give them food. I give them sustenance. I sustain life. HaKadosh Baruch Hu doesn't buy your life; He also sustains life. So therefore, that bracha is the most hashkacha. So there, you don't have to come on to the regular klalim of kol hamukdam in the pasuk. Here, it goes with the regular klalim of what's the most hashkacha, what shows the greatest hashkacha. And this is the Psak of Del Rabbah, the Magen Giborim, the Derech Chaim, the Mam Mordechai, Orach HaShulchan, and the Mishnah Berurah. Reb Moshe, Zechron of the Velkan, Derech Chaim, Simin Chelakei, Simin Chav, Seif Oisid Gimel. The Goyin Reb Moshe says this is the Psak Halacha. If you have his name is Zionis, even of Soirim, says Goyin Reb Moshe always beats like the Levush gebracht in the Mishnah Berurah, Reish Yudal Sivkot in Chavhei. So now, what's the shaila? So that's the psak. I think everyone's going to do that. That's what Ramosha tells us. Darach HaShulchan Zoktazeh, the Mishabura Zoktazeh, Zikha. That's what we'll do. But now comes the shaila. What happens when you sit down to have a bowl of rice? It's a nice Svardisha dish. What happens when you want to have a bowl of rice? Come here, little girl. What happens if you have a bowl of rice and olives? Madinoi achshav. Do you make first the bracha mezoinis, or do you make the bracha on the olive? Now, if we would have read the lashon of the Levush, we would have thought, the way I just explained it, it's nothing to do with the maila of being one of the chameshis minei dagan. We would have thought that it has to do with what? Dafka, the maila of mezoinis, that it's amazing and it shows dashkachas Hashem Yisparach. So we would have thought that l'chayr rice would beat the olive also, even though rice is not one of the chameshis mina dagan. We would have thought that. That's what I think we would have thought. And you look at the lashon over here of the Levush, v'afilu b'minim she'ena mechameshis mina dagan, shebeshivas aminim kegoyim ba'oiris, kaven dezayin, you make a bari min mezainis, v'adifa himi bari priagafen. It beats the priagafen. The mina zayin umaspia v'ol of yechiyadam who adif. The choshev l'adam yayin. It has that koyach. That's moira kol kach doil Hashem Yisbarach hashkacha gdoil Yisbarach aburav. So this is Levush mefurish that seems to say it even on mezainis. Seems to say it even on mezainis, even on oiris. Excuse me. Again, it's not in the pasuk. I did see that the Kaf Chaim says not like this, and he says. Like Oira doesn't have a din kedima. I think that's a very big chiddush. I would have thought that mezainis would beat even wine, meaning rice would beat even wine. That's what I would think. The Maisa, Devin Neuser says the didan if there's oires or zayin minim, mezainis wins, and that's how the Levush seems to paskin. It's interesting that the Mishnah Berurah doesn't speak it out so explicitly. Shabura talks about Sa'orim. I don't know why he doesn't speak about the general. I'm not sure about that so much. Shabura later on in Lamed,
if you can make the rice, you can use a rice cake comes before Geffen.
Yeah. Shabura later on when he says the Seder Kedima, he says Amoitzi Bermin Mezainis. Bermin Mezainis. It doesn't talk about rice. And the Mishnah Berurah bothers me, I must admit. Mishnah Berurah is an obvious, I'm not sure. The Mishnah Berurah leaves out. I'm not sure why, I must tell you. I find it a little difficult. If anybody gets back to me on that, I appreciate it. But based on this, what?
You're saying in the Seder Kedima, the rice is not there.
Later on, when the Mishnah brings the actual Seder Kadima, he should have thrown in rice.
Yeah,
and that would make sense.
It's not in the Magen Avraham. So this is basically a quote of the Magen Avraham, no?
Yeah, I understand. So I guess the kasha will be, and I can't ask the kasha on the Magen Avraham because the Magen Avraham holds anyways Zayis beats Se'orim. So that's why it's not a real diak. It's not a it's not a real diak. Like I saw the Achreinim say, "Whoa, the Pri Megadim argues on the Lavush, and the Pri Megadim argues on the Ebenezer Shkoyach." Of course, he argues. He holds in general that a Zayis beats even barley. So for Shteitzach, Zayis is going to beat rice. He argues on the Ganze Lavush. But Al Kapanim, now I'm going to tell you something. Rabbi said one of the most pleasurable Gevaldige Chalokim of our Torah. I saw once a sefer called Galgal HaChayzer. It has, I think, about 45 simanim and every possible different example in Shas and Poskim of a Galgal HaChayzer. And obviously, you can imagine he has a simon on what we're about to talk about. And this is what the Magen Avraham in Zivkat and Yugimel discusses, which is all based on the Magen Avraham L'Shitasa. And then I'm going to have to find a case which we could have Lefi our halacha l'maisa. The Magen Avraham, the way I just told you, held that if you have Se'orim, so then Se'orim loses to an Aleph. The sheet of the Magen Avraham is that Se'orim loses to an Aleph. Now, Memela, let's try and work out a problem here. Let's see. Actually, before the problem, here I'll read the Magen Avraham. Hayul in front of Yayin v'tavshel Se'orim v'zayis sarchin mayaseh. Now, the Magen Avraham takes on that wine for sure beats an Aleph. Now, that itself could have been debatable because wine is also in the pasuk afterward. Wine is based on agafen. But the Magen Avraham shita is that wine clearly beats the Zayin Midim because the bracha has a special type of a whole type of bracha to it. By agafen, it's a whole different type of bracha. Let's go with that nacha for a moment because I'm going to get to a case which is negay anyways in a moment. And he introduces you to the aside of a galgal chayzer. I have in front of me an olive, a grape, and a barley. So now let's go slow. If I have an olive and wine, which comes first? Wine wins. Okay. Now, if I have wine and barley, the chayra, what wins? Barley wins. Because mezainis beats wine.
Page 300.
But wait a minute. So now if I do that, but if I have barley and an olive, so an olive wins. Wait a minute. But if I go back now, the olive wins. Wait, but now if I take the olive and I put them up against the wine, so then what wins? Wine wins.
I'm sorry,
but 298.
298.
Against the barley, then the barley wins. But if I take the barley and I go up against the olive, then the olive wins the galgal chayzer. Now I don't want to tell on that because
could the
you don't really
could the Rav repeat that again, please, a little slower? What's the galgal chayzer again?
The galgal chayzer of the Magen Avraham. The galgal chayzer of the Magen Avraham. I'm going to say, I'll repeat it, but I don't want to tell on it because we don't hold necessarily of his hanachas. But the Magen Avraham has three hanachas. One is that olives beat barley. That's going to be the problem. We don't hold like that. He has another hanacha that barley beats wine. And he has another hanacha that wine beats olives. So now, who do I make the bracha on first? The barley? No way. Already there's an olive over here. Okay, so I'll make the bracha on the olive. No way. Because there's wine over here. Oh, so I'll make the bracha on the wine. No way. Because barley beats wine. Now, we can't go with the Magen Avram's cheshbonis because we don't necessarily hold like that. We hold anyways that barley wins. And therefore, the Shar Tshuva brings over here and Zivkat Nahal, there's nothing to discuss. Because we hold that barley wins anyways. So make the bracha on the barley, then on the wine, and then on the olive in Kol Tuv. Let's get one that's mamish practical. Watch, Rabbi Say. Okay? And I'm going to ask everybody to take a pen and paper, if you still own one, and write this down. I have grapes, apples, and watermelons. You can make pictures if you like.
One second. We're writing. Put it on the screen on the chat, somebody, please. Put the rubs on the chat. Apple. What else?
Grape, apple, watermelon.
Apple, grape, and watermelon. Okay, somebody write it up, please, quickly.
Apple, grape, and watermelon.
Eliezer, write it up.
Now, I'm going to get very personal. I don't always tell you about my personal life, even though I invite you to my chasanas, but I don't know if I take you about my personal life, but now I'm going to get very personal. By me, I love apples. They're number one. Write it down. Apples are number one by me. Number 2, watermelon. Okay. And number 3 by me is a grape. Again, grapes are number 3 in levels of what I like. Apples are number 1 and watermelons number 2. Now, somebody disagrees with me. I find that personally offensive. This is what I like. If you don't like it, you can turn off the screen right now, Rabbi say. Okay, now watch this. Kallus has a shiloh. What do I make the bracha on first? So let's go slow. If I have the chayra, eitz adama, no, we don't just say eitz beats adama. We don't do that. That's far didn't do that. We don't say that. We say, if you have a chaviv, and by the way, by me, I always love it, and I love it now. When I think of apples, I think Klal Yisrael's nimshal to tapuach, and I think of it reminds me of our Sinai, don't ask. So Mamela, if I have in front of me an apple, it gives me the biggest simcha. I would love to make, I chaviv the apple the most. Oh, so then I make the bracha on the apple. No, come on. You have a grape here. Come on, everybody knows that, right? Everybody knows that grapes beat apples, and we don't care about chaviv, because when we have 8 against 8, so then Zion Minim wins. So I guess I got to make a bracha on the grape. Okay, so I have a grape, even though the grape is the least that I like, it doesn't matter. We don't look at chaviv. Wait a second though, but 1 minute. But if I have a watermelon and I like it more than I like grapes, which obviously I do, because we said watermelon's number 2. So now if I have a choice of a dumber 8, don't we look at chaviv? We do. So I have to make the bracha on the watermelon, because the watermelon I like more than grapes. Wait a minute. But you want to talk about chaviv, so then the chaviv of the 8s is the apple, and I like her more than I like the watermelon. So now we got a problem. Nachabul. I have watermelon, grapes, and apples. The one I like the most is the apple. Oh, so then she's the chaviv. Yeah, she's the chaviv shkoyach. But you make on the Zion Minim when you have 8s against 8s. So I have to make on the grape. Fine, so I'll make on the grape. What's about grape? Who's going to make on the grape? I have a watermelon here that I like more than grapes. Oh, so make on the watermelon. Anti-Semite. How are you going to make on the watermelon, which is number 2, when you have an apple over here, which you love the most? So that's the chaviv. Fine, so I'll make on the apple. Shaygitz. How could you make on the apple? There's a grape over there that's saying I'm a Zion Minim. You got the case? You got the problem?
We got the problem.
I think I'll just have a beer instead. So what do we do? So l'chayra, at first I thought to myself, look, in the end of the day, it's definitely a shiloh. And maybe I could do like I learned from my Rebbe, the Bir Alocha, and he taught us that maybe now you could be mitzaref the bahag. You know, when you have these types of shilohs and it's not so clear and whatever, so maybe over here I would be mitzaref the bahag anyways. And I would say, listen, since the bahag goes, you always go by priyates first, so I'll just do by priyates first. Once I do by priyates first, for shteitzach, you have to do first the pomegranate. The grape. You have to do the grape first. I was thinking another thing, that also, when I make the bracha on the grape, this is a little bit of a cheshbon. When I make the bracha on the grape, I'm not just making the bracha on the grape, I'm making the bracha on the apple too. By making the bracha on the grape, I'm also making the bracha on the apple. So the chaviv of the apple is going to be getting its bracha before I make the bracha on the watermelon. So those were 2 svars that I had, which would say that you should make on the 8s first. I got a store on the Zeis HaPracha in Bir Alocha Simim Mem Zayin. He has this idea, and he seems to say not like that. He seems to go with that lumdus that we spoke last time, that since anyways you're making. So then you should for sure go with the chaviv klape, what you're going to wind up by safe making brachas on. In other words, I'm only going to make an adama and I'm going to make 1/8. So for sure you're going to wind up making the bracha on the grape. So I guess what he means is that, so therefore just knock out ways about the apple, because they're not in the cheshbon anyways. Because you're for sure not making the bracha on the apple. You're only just making the bracha on the grape. So once you're making the bracha on the grape, then I have a right to say watermelon beats the grape. That's his cheshbon. I hear it a little bit. I'm a supik. I saw the Stipler has a letter about this in the Shiurei Shalmei Toida in BRACHOS, page 25. He doesn't have my case. He has a different Galgal Chaser. This is the Stipler's preference of foods. The Stipler loved figs. He probably never had them because of the bugs. But the Stipler figs, write down figs. And the Stipler number 2 loved bananas. They were the second by the Stipler. Figs number 1, banana number 2. And by the Stipler, the third was the date. Canary, we know the Stipler had a whole problem in a date. So Mamela traumatized from dates. So you have again.
Put on the chat.
Fig,
figs, bananas, dates.
Fig number 1. That's the one he loves the most. Banana number 2, and dates number 3. Same problem. Same problem. We know that what gets bracha first, te'ena or tamer? So the answer is simple. I'd rather date the pits. There's more pits, obviously, in a te'ena. Samamela, tamer is less pits. So the bracha, if you ever can make a bracha on a tamer, you make the bracha on the tamer. Mitzad Sheni, we got a big problem. So I'll make the bracha on the tamer. How can you make the bracha on the tamer? He likes bananas more. So you got to go with the chaviv. So I'll make the bracha on the banana, the chaviv. What do you mean? How could you make the bracha on the banana? Didn't you listen? He likes figs the most. So figs in the chaviv kite beats the banana. Yeah, but we're not going to make the bracha on the fig anyways. We're anyways making the bracha on the tamer. Good to shayla by say. Das is the shayla.
Figs, bananas, dates. Can't do the fig. Why can't you do the figs? Because of the dates. Because
the bracha of a tamer, because mitzad the pits. When I cheshbon out, I go with which has less pits? Tamar. So that's the bracha you always make when you have two shivas and minivs up against each other. Tamer always beats figs.
And the banana is just the one that's chaviv.
And the banana is the super chaviv.
But it's a dama and it's bottled to the eights.
Yeah, now somebody can start saying all types of cheshbonis since banana is a shaila of a tzad that it's an eights anyway. So maybe I want to make the dama first anyways. All that type of cheshbonis. What does I? Let me get weiter. Next shaila. The shaila is that if you have food or drink, which comes first? The Ritva in Brachos Daf Mem Aleph says there's no din kedima. If you have a drink and a food, so if you have a chaviv, no question, you could even make on the drink. But let's say I don't have a chaviv. He says you can do what you want. Interesting. The Aruch HaShulchan and Sivit Zayin says near li achila beats shti. I wonder. This is an Aruch HaShulchan that he brings no makor except for near li. I wonder if here you could apply that if the Aruch HaShulchan would have seen the Ritva, which is a Rishon, he would have been Bat L'daite. But I think that, if I'm not mistaken, I think the people that are makbid on the Kedim and Brachos, I think they do food before drink. So I think, afraid to say it, but I think that the people, they do the food before the drink. Is there a Kedima, I mentioned before about an apple? I found an interesting Kaf HaChaim and Sikon Zayin. Again, if all factors are equal, you have an apple and you have a walnut. You have an apple and you have, and they're both shalom. You have an apple and you have an orange. So it says you make on the apple first because apples nimshal klal Yisrael nimshal alginas eges yiradati kitapuach batzei hayar nimshal to klal Yisrael. Okay, okay. Then there's all shilas about maybe even shvius. There's they asked Chaim Kanievsky in yesh din kedima levar koydem aper shvius in peres sheinim al shvius. So he said mistaber. It's mistaber because according to the Ramban, you get a mitzvah by eating it. Certainly, if it's chaviv, obviously it should be l'kari tali in the Shai Ramban. If you get a mitzvah by eating the pear shvius, okay, those are zaytig nekudas. Now, I want to finish up here with one. Actually, we'll come back to the sugya. I'll finish up with that sugya in a minute. There's one more thing I want to mention over here, which is very important. There's also Kedima in Brachos, says the Bir Halacha in Reish Beis Sifid Aleph, by Bracha Achrona. And you're supposed to make first, let's say an Alamichya, then a Bar Nefashis, that's what you're supposed to do. Bir Halacha brings, Yivarech Hamein Shalosh Koydim Di Chashuva. There's a Seder Kedima in Brachos, this is brought in the Prima Gadim in Reish Beis, Pri Megadim also in the Psicha of HILCHOS BRACHOS in Eis Yud. Pri Megadim says that there's a kedima of brachos. It's yoser chashav and b'ray nefashos, so that we know al mechia beats a b'ray nefashos. There's a very interesting shaila in Reish Ches in the Mechaber in Sifir Gimel that the Shartzian talks about in Reish Ches Samech Daled. Did I bring this in the Marmakaimis?
No.
Very interesting thing. Reish Ches Yud Gimel and Shartzian Reish Ches Yud Gatan Samech Daled. What's a shaila? The Mishnah Brew over here brings a Chayi Adam, which declares a very interesting tzad. He declares it tzad that when I say the bracha of Ala Eitz, Al Pi Eitz, you say in there, Al Tnuvas Hasadeh, Al Aretz, Al Peiros, Al Tnuvas Hasadeh. He says over there, he has a declare from the Chayi Adam that maybe, I read you the Welch in the Chayi Adam, he says, maybe you were yotzei now the B'ray Nefashos on an Adama. Let's say you had a potato and you had pomegranates. So you're making an alates. He says he's worried, and normally we have to keep the kedim and bracha, so we make the alates first, and then after the b'ray nefashos. The Chayadim says, I'm very nervous. Maybe once you made the alates, you're yotzei with the potato. Why? It sounds like a medrash pliya. So the Shartzian brings the Chayadim that maybe you're yotzei with the words ala aretz vi al ha-peiros. You said the words Tnuvas Asada and you said the word Peiros. So in there, you mentioned the Tnuvas Asada. The Shein Zachin was kumtarois from the field, that comes out of the fields. So Mamela, maybe in them, select praise and the Haidoye today the Kabashefer for the potato. The Shartzian argues on that. He says, I didn't bring this because the Lashon the Rambam says, Shekulam Priya Eitzein Leimash Mekain. He learns not like this. And it's interesting. So that the Ravad is chayshish for this, but the Mishabur is not chayshish for this. So I guess until now you didn't know it, so then you're okay. So nothing changed. That's one thing I wanted to tell the Chashav Oilam. Another thing is, let's say a person in the middle of the meal goes to be excused, before the case, right before he benches, he's supposed to be a guf naki to bench. So does he say Asher Yotze first, or does he bench first? This is the famous shaila of the Marshal in Siman Sadi Zayin, Yam Shashleim, it's actually a very famous shaila. Shabru discusses it in Siman Zayin, in Sukkot and Beis.
What are the tzedadim of the shaila?
Do we say Tadir v'shayna Tadir? And we say, we know which one's Tadir, I say. So the Marshal said that the bathroom is Tadir. So you have to ask people. That the bathroom is Tadir. Ezaktas. That's one cheshbon, he says. So he says, look, so Tadir v'shayna Tadir, that's one cheshbon. And another cheshbon he has there, and we use Lashon. He says, Asher Yatzer is ein lashir. It means that since even on one drop, a person has to make an Asher Yatzer. That shows you the level of chashivas. Mashen came when it comes to food, in order to make the bracha on food, and the bracha chayna is a shear. So you see, you have to gain, you have to gain the chiyuv. I guess the importance and severity of the pleasure of Asher Yatzer is so visig, it outweighs. So Higrada says, and that's the Psak Halacha of Rabbeinu the Mishabura, Asher Yatzer is kaidim, either because it's tadir, or because, like we just mentioned, either because it's tadir, or because it has no shear to it. That's how Beis Khan.
What's the Havamina that the Alagef, the design should be first?
That the what should be first?
What?
Which one?
What's the Havamina that the bracha chayna should be first?
I would imagine because the bracha chayna is patterned more after the deraisa of Birchas Hamazon. There's more of a tzad that it's neveya more from the deraisa.
Even Alamichis.
There's a tzad Alamichis deraisa, and even if it's not mamish deraisa, but it's certainly ke'ein deraisa tiknu. Certainly Bernafashis is not deraisa, but it's all ke'ein deraisa, b'chalta v'savata.
So a tadir of a deraisa is always kaidim to a tadir of drabanan.
No, but Dashiyat is not deraisa. No, they're both not deraisa.
Bracha chayna is more chamor.
Right, you'd have to ask a different shaila. What I think Rabbi Akiva Eiger talks about this. You have to ask this. I didn't look up, but I remember this episode of Rabbi Akiva Eiger about this. You have to ask a different shaila. What if it's Birchas Hamazon or Ashiyatzer? I think it was like Shagzari about this. I didn't look into this, but I think there's a grace of rage. Shagzari to Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Let's say Birchas Hamazon or Ashiyatzer. So Birchas Hamazon Deraisa Mamish. Let's say he's Shavat Mamish. So that's Mamish Deraisa. How could you say Tadir against the Deraisa? That. He's talking there, the Marshal, about a Bar Nefashis. Now I'm looking at the Tshuva, talking about Bar Nefashis. I remember the episode Shagas Aryeh. I don't see it now, but I remember it was hold on one second. Look, I remember this.
Who says when is the chiyuv? It's chal. Maybe it's chal when you finish.
You're ready to go.
I can say so. But before you finished eating, the Ashiyatz was chal because you had to go to the. No, but the Rav said a different shaila. You can't go. The Marshal was to tell you can't bench before you go to the bathroom because you don't have a gufnaki. So, okay, so the olam here is raising the shaila. The chayr the chiyuv of under the raisa, the chayr the chiyuv of the Birchas Hamazon was chal right when you get to Kedei Svia. That's what you're saying, Yaakov.
When you finish eating.
When you finish eating.
I see here Rabbi Akiva Eiger. Rabbi Akiva Eiger in Sivkat and Aleph and Sim Zayin is mistopic in this by Deraisa. I remember more. I remember the Chaksari is on there. It's like one of these bar mitzvah drushes. I think that was a plus, this is now. There's a big sugi here. I'm not going to be able to learn with the oilam the sugi at a soif simply because it's a sugi which depends on a whole piece of information on Siman Reish Vav that we don't have at a soif, which is how do brachos work. In other words, when I make a bracha on an apple and I have das that it should go on the orange, so what is that? Is it greira? Let's say I make a bracha on one apple and I don't even have das on the other apple. So we know the law is if you made a bracha on an apple and you decide to have another apple in the middle, it does schlep it. Machenke, an apple might not turn into an orange if you didn't have das. Today, everyone lives in fresh mode. He walks into the kitchen and he just looks around and fregnish, nobody's safe. So it could be that stam das. So there's a whole sugi here in order to appreciate the Ramon Sifei that you have to know. But I want to just mention it because I think it's a greisa zach that's negel and maisa that people don't realize. In other words, what you're seeing now is that, for example, cake or rice, for shteitzach, a person would make the bracha on cake and pata the rice. A person has an olive or an apple, for shteitzach, he makes the bracha on the olive and he patas the apple. Because the Milo of Shivas Aminim, or the Milo of Shivas Aminim certainly beats the other choice. So if I have a choice of an olive or an apple, there's no shayla, the bracha is on an olive and on the apple. That's mitzad Seder Akadima. Now, what happens if I messed up? So generally, if you messed up, it's not such a big deal. No, you messed up. I mean, Khalil, but you accidentally made a bracha on a potato before you made the bracha on the cake. No, besides now make the bracha on the cake. But what happens if I messed up and the methodology of how it's pottering is derech greira? Koimar, I make a bracha on an apple, and I didn't think about the olive. Let's make it an easier case because it does get a little complicated. Let's say it's not befun of, but it's like stam das. I'm having an apple now, and whatever else might come my way. I don't know that I'm going to have the olive. This is a major, major problem. The Rashba in Brachos Daf Mem Aleph brought in the Beis Yosef says Avabaloi Miskaven. Usually, Seder Kedima is not a problem, but you can have a Seder Kedima which creates a tremendous problem. If you're supposed to make a bracha on the cake and not on the rice, and you made the bracha on the rice, so if you had das explicit, no, that maybe is a different story. But if you don't have das explicit, and you made the bracha on the rice, or you made the bracha on the apple, you want to now pata the olive, but you weren't thinking about the olive, but the way it works is just like in a stam das. Now, this is the part which is difficult, which is reish vav, when it's called stam das or not, but let's assume that that's the case. I'll get practical in a moment. So here, the Ramah in Sifei, very important Ramah, says, a very sneaky Ramah, because if you could learn well of reish vav and not realize how serious this is, Ramah says, and read you his lashon. He says, the Kol said that Tzarech La'akdim is l'chatchila, but if you're over, so if Brachos Shabbos, it's okay. Vein Tzarech La'akdim levarach hazeh shalikan. Ubelvad she'edaitai Allah b'birchasai. You have to have das on it when you're making the bracha. Now, this is a very, very serious thing. The Chai Adam brings heavy loy pri. Bruce called name base. Chai Adam sam sim samach heavy loy pri shechashiv v'chaviv v'lav yosim and rishon. He had an apple, and he's in fresh mode, right? He's in fresh mode, or he has an apple and he's at das. He's eating at somebody else's house. So whatever the guy will bring me, I have das on. It's not real das. It's like stam das. Says there, unbelievable thing. Sarich levarech the kulei alma. You have to make another bracha unless you have das beferish the pater. The einai bedin. This is the lashon of the Paiskim here. It's not richtig. It's not proper. She yiftor the eina chashiv to the chashiv derech greira unless you had kavanah mefurish. So now, if you go to your friend's house, he brings you out an apple. You break a bracha by creates, and then afterward he brings you out a orange. Okay, so you could say stam das. But if he brings you out an apple, then after he brings you out an olive, he brings you out an apple, and afterward he brings you out a pomegranate. So now the Chai Adam says you have to make a bracha. You have to make a bracha. I think this
because
is
you
very
didn't have a kavana, a clear kavana when you did the
because of einai bidin. Normally we don't care about the kavana because you could be in fresh mode or you could be al das balabayas. But it's einai bidin. It's improper that without das mefereshes, the bracha on an apple should go on pater shivas minim. The bracha on a rice should pater a piece of cake. I would say this is definitely
what's
not.
the lumdus there? How does it become?
Because it only works duch greira. So you can't have a greira unless it's das mefereshes. But
can you explain to the Ilam?
In brachas,
can you explain to the Ilam
that's
the
the part
concept
which
of
you really need
greira?
to learn Reish Vav to appreciate. There's one way that brachas work, that if I have a das, I'm eating the apple and I'm eating the orange. So then my brachas go straight on the orange, the Rishayim say. But if I have a bracha on an apple, and I just stam das, so then we say, if it's derech, it could be goyrer. They could schlep. On that, the chiddush is you can't schlep without das mefereshes, something which is more chashiv. That's the Rashba's chiddush here. Which again, until you learn Reish Vav, it might not be so pashit to understand. But Takapanim, it comes out very negative kazach. It comes out very negative kazach. It would only be this idea by a chaviv or a min sheva, but not by a shalim. That's what Mepharshim explained. But I'll just give you an example. There's a Mogen Avram in Reish Yud, in Reish Vav, Siv Ches. He says, let's say have nice apples and not such nice apples, right? And he didn't have the Beferish Das on the better apples. Like he's just looking for an apple. He took one apple, okay, whatever, shvach apple. And then afterward he sees, wow, that's a nice looking apple. So the Mogen Avram says, you got to make a new bracha on the better apple. Kosav mat the Moshe, birach al Paris, voidim avarach, hevi loy Paris, yaiser yafim. And they brought him nicer apples. Yocham Rishayim Tchila, Kevin Shabir, Maisi made the bracha. They say, wait, why are you eating those apples? Those apples are shmutzig dik. So he says, right away, just take a bite, because you don't want it to be a bracha watala. Right? He says, if you didn't have das on the nicer apples, then you can't eat that nicer one without a bracha. Ayin, Reshid, Aleph, Sifei, Ar Alacha. So I don't know, I would say this is definitely of the most not known thing, and therefore I decided to see what could we find that Psalim Etzchus over here, and I found absolute shocking Limetzchus. I would say it's quite shocking. This is an Aruch HaShulchan, and with this I will close. Aruch HaShulchan is in.
Yud
Is that where it is? 1 second.
You sent us Yud Zayin.
Could be, definitely could be. Yeah, Tezayin. Tezayin. Chashulchan and Siv Kot in Tezayin is a very, very riesige Chiddush. Chashulchan says it's one of the few places in all of Halacha that it's not gedai to be a Talmud Chacham. He says, Nila is daiti, this din of the Ramah, that the Einach Chashiv doesn't pat to the Chashiv, that's regular people. Excuse me, that's Talmud Chacham. Shedei Adin, he knows this. So if you know this, so why in the world did you make the bracha on the apple and not on the olive? You know he's supposed to make a bracha on the olive and not on the apples. So what's going on over here? In kolzais birach al sheina chashiv. So then we say mistama zag guy. He has das beferish, not the pater. But let's say you have a regular guy, and Abai say you guys in this kailel, you're not regular guys because you're learning the sugya. If a misha and he doesn't know this. The shaloi b'kavana, he's done. He put an apple. So he made the bracha on the apple. But dai gam b'stama his kavana is on the olive, and he says, "V'filu b'tamid chachem." Ulai sphere like a Rambam. Maybe this Talmud Chacham was like the Rambam. The Chazon is kaidim, and maybe by you gets very complicated. Maybe you like apples more than olives, and the Rambam's sheet is Chaviv always wins. Don't forget. They always the Chain Dinsha Rabbeinu it's Tzarich Ian the Efshir Lahoiris Kain Lamaisa. Unbelievable. No, it's the Talmud Chacham. Reb Talmud Chacham. Why in the world did you make the bracha on the apple before the olive? Must be because you like the apple.
But according to the Ramah, you're Yotze b'di'evet. So why isn't that sufficient?
No. You're Yotze b'di'evet only if it's not the cases which are more chashiv. He's going only on a case of an apple and orange. Let's say a cake and I don't know what. No. Let's say chocolate and what can I find you a case?
Sa'irim and yain?
No, that for sure, but you're right. He talks about a case of Brachos Shabbos. So what's that case? Let's say, one second.
Anybody think of a case? Everybody wake up here.
A case here. I'm not sure of a case. No, I got it. The case is simple. The case is he had das mefreshes. He has an apple and an orange. Yitaka likes oranges more, and he made the bracha on the apple, but he had das on both. So then we're not going durch greira.
So what again? So what case of the BF doesn't work? If
he has an apple and an orange, and he likes oranges more, but he had das mefureshes on both. He made the bracha on the apple, and he thinking tells I'm having an apple and an orange, and why'd you do that, Rabbi? Do you like oranges more? So b'diavad, it's okay. But let's say you have a case of an apple and an olive, and you didn't have das mefureshes, or the case of apple and orange. You have an apple and orange, and you didn't have das mefureshes, but it's there, b'fanav and stam das and whatever. No. If you like the orange more, or the olive is more important because it's shivas aminim, and you didn't have das mefreshes, the psak of the Ramah is you have to make another bracha. The HaShulchan says, nah, you must have had a cheshbon, you can't make another bracha, but this is a shver zach. The Rabbi say.
Okay.
I'm not going to sikum.
Yeah.
The sikum of the day is maga eish. That's the kaveya. Pits, never forget that the rest of your life. The Bayre parades beating Bayre Adama, we bask in Adama would win if it's Chaviv. But if the eights is Chaviv, even now, even though it's generally not Chaviv, we'll be Mitzaref to sheet to the Bahag. This is why we don't forget, we have to cover the cake. I only have to cover my cake. I don't have to cover his cake, only the one I'm eating. The siren beating olives, that's a big machlekes. Magen Avram joins up with the Taz, and the Mishmur is Chaylik. He says Mizainis always wins, I think, even by rice. We saw different Galgal HaChayzers. The one that was the most negay us was the case of where you have an Adama, which is more desirable to you than the winner in the eights. Kloimar, the Zayin Minim, which was the grape. And we saw we went around and around. I got thought that maybe in that case we'll be mitzvah the sheet to the Bahag. Others said that no, we'll look at the eights that you're going to wind up making the bracha on. So then that's the only one we look at. So therefore, the watermelon in that case did beat the grape. In apples, maybe is the mila if all factors are equal. Nimshal Kallus Yisrael, drinks beating food. I think the minig is like the Aruch HaShulchan that people make on food before a drink. But Al Kapanim, the Ritva says there is no kedima. Obviously, over there you would be makdim the chaviv if there's a chaviv. Then it came to the shaila of bracha achrona. Bracha achrona does have a seder kedima. However, there was a shaila. Sometimes you're going to get into shailas that maybe the Adama is pattered by the alaitz. The Mishnah Berurah was not chayshish. Says make the alaitz and then the Baron Nefashis. By Greira, we learned the biggest study of the Ramah, that the Ramah said if you have das on both.
Asher Yatza first.
Asher Yatza beating. Thank you very much. Asher Yatza beating bracha achrein. It seems that Kipshuta Asher Yatza beats the bracha achrein. Rikiveger is mistapik by Birchas Hamazon deraisa. Asher Yatza was tadir. Asher Yatza was a chashiv because it doesn't even have a shear. Ishladin. Maybe tadir beats. That was the suffix Rikiveger. The din of Greira, we saw that if you have das on both, then Avada the Seder Kedima doesn't have a problem. But if you don't have kavanah on both, so then, and you're only going durch Greira, it's ein abedin that the less chashiv should pater the more chashiv, and therefore if you make a bracha on an apple and you didn't have dots on the olive, you just had stam das, and you know you might eat the olive, so then you have a big problem. Chashulim says, nah, it must be that if you're not a Talmid Chacham, your mamish ignorance is bliss, and if you're a Talmid Chacham, then maybe you break the bracha on the apple first because you're in the mood for an apple, and then you have the Shittas Rambam sackage you make a bracha on the olive. Huge stuff, fake. We'll be simcha together, Abba Yisai, as Hashem. We'll be zeicha to be in the Chasana in Yerushalayim Kodesh next week. I look forward to all seeing you all dance at the Chasana in Sequoia. As is Hashem Yisbarach.